Now see, and this is why they becomes too powerful. Everything is to be documented. Everything is to be kept. Everything is to be put into a record, right? And this creates a lot of different problems, right, of making decisions. Slow decisions, right? These decisions can never be made in time because ultimately there are a lot of procedures to be followed. There are a lot of documents to be referred. They have to be shown again and again, again and again, again and again. Fine. So clerical level pay, right? Staff level pay या lower staff level pay, बहुत सारे procedures हैं. सिर्फ इसलिए so that higher levels should not get bothered. They are more into just saying yes or no. तो बहुत ज्यादा scrutiny lower और middle level पे इसीलिए होती है कि higher level पे जो चीज है बहुत filtered होके जाए, right? And because of this the procedure delays. So second RC has now analyzed this one thing, the need for structural reforms. These structural reforms are necessary at all the levels. State ho, union ho, jo bhi ho, right? So multiplicity of procedures. Non-rational distribution of functions. See? Transport, multiple ministries. Rural development, various ministries coming together, right? Social justice, एक ministry बनाई है, लेकिन functions बहुत सारे organizations से हो सकते हैं. So there are a lot of overlapping in various functions, right? One single function could have been consolidated under one ministry, but the tendency is to make more ministry on the ground of specialization. But specialization की जगह क्या होता है? Again, red tape, hierarchy, red tapeism, whatever. So ultimate purpose तो है कि to be specialized. But specialization is not happening, right? Ultimately, these ministries get into conflict with each other. In this school, second RC uses the word, there are turf wars. Turf wars between ministries or departments. Industry versus Ministry of Environment and Forest. बिल्कुल. Coal है versus renewable. Fine. And likewise, बहुत सारे examples हैं. So various, right, ministries, departments, right, they are constantly in turf wars, and that is why they start, right? How do they operate in silos? Compartments में operate करते हैं. This again reduces administrative expenditure, time, delay, cost, right? Extensive use of procedures, double checks, accountability mechanism, जिसका कोई ultimate benefit citizen को नहीं. Fine. Systemic, yes, drawbacks emerge होते हैं, resolve होते हैं, emerge होते हैं, resolve होते हैं, but ultimate benefit citizen को नहीं पहुंचते. Now that's the, you written this entire words. If you write these keywords used properly, fine, you can write 200 words answer. Just using these vocab, right? क्योंकि एथिक्स में हम जो है बहुत कहानी लिखने की जरूरत नहीं. थर्ड, piecemeal reforms. Impact of punctuated equilibrium. Fine, this is a term used by secondary RC only. Now what secondary RC has said that, or whatever the reforms have been initiated, now it is saying that these reforms are first, right? They are done in compartments. They are done in one phase and then they are neglected. So punctuated equilibrium would look something like this. A phase of reform and then gap. Again, next phase of reform and then gap. So there is no, right, continuity in reforms. Random incremental changes. जैसे आज मन किया तो पढ़ लिया, राइट, फिर मन नहीं किया तो नहीं पढ़ा, फिर 2 दिन बाद मन किया फिर थोड़ा पढ़ लिया, राइट, बट अल्टीमेटली वी आर इन द प्रोसेस. हाँ, सिस्टमिक फ्लॉज पूजा, करेक्ट. वी आर इन द प्रोसेस, राइट, बट वी आर नॉट फॉलोइंग द प्रोसेस. अंडरस्टैंड? सो हम प्रोसेस में हैं लेकिन प्रोसेस को फॉलो नहीं कर रहे. It makes us feel good that we are in the process, but we do not realize that consistency is much more influential than intelligence. Intelligence can save time, lot of things, right? But without consistency, right, it is like a car or it is a Ferrari without steering. What will you do? Right? So what will you do? Nothing. So intelligence को भी direction किससे मिलता है? Consistency से. So let's say same happens here. Government reforms, then government goes in sleep, then again comes back, again goes in sleep, and then so what happens? Bureaucracy क्या है? उसको भी ये नहीं पता. See, it doesn't develop the capability to act or to give solutions to various problems. It does not develop the approach how to be adaptive to the changes. So most of the reforms क्या हैं? They are just reactions to circumstances. They are just done when the problem appears, so they take some solution. See, a बहुत interesting theory है PubAd में, right? Administration में when we study public policy or like this, right? So एक interesting idea which says garbage can. Policy making कैसा process है? Garbage can model. So this was a model known as garbage can model. Given by scholar Olson. So garbage can model says that imagine administrative problems or issues, right, and their solutions. So policy problems and solutions, administrative problems and solutions, they are put into 2 garbage cans. ठीक है, तो ये क्या है? Problems और ये है solutions. Now, why he is using the word garbage can? Because they are not arranged. Problems क्या तुम create करते हो थोड़े बहुत, right? But problems अपने आप appear भी होते हैं. So you cannot simply say that this problem, or you cannot always predict the problem. Problems appear, and many of these problems have appeared beforehand also. Understand? So one set of can is for the problems that have appeared, that exist, right? And they may appear. See, problems, right? Problems are not dependent on solutions. And even to a large extent, solutions are also not directly dependent on problems. Okay? So let's imagine this way, that bureaucrats are uncategorized, correct? So they are not classified, they are not defined properly. Bureaucrats have solutions, system has solutions, there are problems which are emerging, right? Some solutions have been given earlier, some solutions were not successful, some were there. So हर चीज आपकी कहाँ है? आपका एक झोला है, उसके अंदर है. Fine. So when you start preparing, so first few weeks or maybe a month, see how you arrange your room. You arrange your bags, right? You keep the books, classify them neatly, put everything. After 1 month, right? You don't know where you are putting your hand and then bringing up one. अच्छा यहाँ भी है, जी कुछ दिन बाद पेन यहाँ से निकलता है कोई, right? Toothbrush के box में पेन है. That means what? See, it becomes messy after a point of time. That is the idea. कि गवर्नमेंट शुरू में जब बनी होगी तो बहुत अच्छा काम करती होगी. धीरे धीरे obviously government started facing crisis, some problem, multiple problems at the same time. Some it is giving solution, some it is not able to give solution. So they reflect the messiness of the government process or government's approach to solve problems. See? So this problems and solution, right? So what this model says that policymakers, right? A problem appears, for example, from this garbage bin. There are multiple problems sleeping here, right? So these problems are here. One problem appears. Now what he does, will he, now see, because they have a reactionary model. They are not pre-planned. They are not anticipating. They are not evaluating things beforehand, right? Because they are not developed tuned for that. So what happens? Problem is appearing, right? Problem becomes important. Now problem is visible. Let us say problem बहुत छोटा था थोड़े दिन पहले, धीरे धीरे वो बहुत influential problem बन गया. तो वो क्या करेंगे? अब वो बोलेंगे see what we have to do now. We have to solve it. I don't care, right? How much this problem is solved. 40% or 30% or 50% मुझे इससे मतलब नहीं. Problem solve होना चाहिए, right? So political pressure, top level influencing it, and suddenly they pick up any random solution which is available, right? They pick up this solution now. And this solution is picked by, let's say, putting the hand in this can and trying to find out कि कौन सा best solution हाथ में आ जाए. See, निकाल दिया. Are you getting this point? Now see. So what is this idea? This idea simply says that reforms or solutions are never searched for in a planned manner. They are always given in the, or they are always provided in the government to specify that circumstance, to delay the consequence of the problem. वो सिर्फ क्या करते हैं? They are buying time. So their approach is what? To pacify and to buy some time.
But the problem के बाद ही तो solution होगा. That is why bureaucracy is being.
Problem के बाद मतलब?
मतलब जब तक कुछ issue नहीं होगा तब तक.
बिल्कुल correct है. But उसको solve कैसे करेंगे? Let's say problem appears. How will you solve now? What is your approach? So we are saying जो already solution है, जो solution fail हो चुका है, और whatever solution that was taken somewhere, अब दुनिया में सारी problems नई तो नहीं होती. Understand? So problems का nature, content अलग हो सकता है थोड़ा, right? But उसका जो general approach है या broad generalized principle है वो तो change नहीं होगा. Are you getting? Government के भी तो अब try to understand. You have 3 pens in your box, red, blue, green, for example. Now someone says write with the black pen. How will you write? You'll mix those colors, find out कि कैसे black बनेगा, लेकिन वो बनेगा नहीं वैसे black. Correct. Are you getting my point? Let us say तुम उसको black बनाओ, हर बार लिखो फिर उसको लिखोगे दोबारा ना, तब बनेगा ना भाई. What is this approach? Messiness. That is the idea. It's not being said कि solutions नहीं है, problems पता है. Problems emerge होते हैं. They don't comprehend the problem fully. They just see some problem, broad aspect. They give a solution, right? And that is why that problem never ends.
Problem is here that the bureaucracy is not basically using predictive analysis.
They, even if they are not, let us say they don't use that, right? In any case, if any problem appears, their approach to solve it is what? Not to solve it rationally, not to solve it completely. They only try to solve the tip of iceberg and then they say it's okay, let's go. Are you getting? Idea is that अगर उसको fully solve करते तो फिर वो comprehend करेंगे, then they will analyze it, then they will file the facts. अब उतना time है नहीं. क्यों? क्योंकि पहले anticipation नहीं किया. Are you getting? So this model says कि भाई sometimes there are problems but no solutions. Sometimes there are solutions but no problems. जैसे?
For example, new problem arises, and administration is also working with the usual core function.
New means what? You have not understood my point. When I said you have 3 pens and somebody asks you to write with a black pen, what does it mean? Your nature of problems would be a consequence of the type of functions you are performing. बिल्कुल it's a health problem. It was a pandemic problem. They could have anticipated. When it will come, nobody could think about it, right? Are you understanding? But उससे पहले Ebola आ चुका था, उससे पहले कुछ और आ चुका था, उसके पहले कुछ और आ चुका था. See, what did they do? Did they anticipate that? I'm not talking about the vaccine. I'm talking about health infrastructure. Fine. So Ebola outbreak was not less, no? Equally influential, right? H5N1 equally influential. या जो भी था. तो health infrastructure, where did they work on that? Timing 100,000 लोगों को इफेक्ट हुआ, उन्होंने बोला ठीक है जैसे चलते हैं फिर देखेंगे. That is the attitude. That is what it is trying. So when you have 3 pens, you cannot write with the black pen. The idea is कि जो functions government perform करती है, problems भी तो वहीं से emerge होंगे कहीं ना कहीं, right? Alien problems थोड़ा ना आ जाएंगे, जो functions perform कर रही है वही तो problems आएंगे. So in those functions, what is the level of anticipation? If you are dealing with health function and you have 4 sub-functions in the health department, you will be able to anticipate, no, in these 4 sub-functions, what will be the possible problems that will emerge. Yes, they are not in the able state to anticipate, Pooja, but the logic is that if you say I have 100 rupees, you cannot create 500 out of that 100. No, unless you do something, obviously. So that's the logic. The functions or the area of functioning of the government is fixed. It is performing certain functions, right? And it is performing it since, let's say, 80 years, 100 years. And in those certain functions, it is not able to anticipate what will be the nature of problem. So जो भी problems आएंगे, वो कहीं ना कहीं उन्हीं में से तो आएंगे, जो functions वो perform कर रहे हैं. The government cannot be made responsible for the UFOs, no? Right, understand? But government can be definitely made responsible for the strategic and the defense or the security of the nation. ये तो किया सकता है. अब उन्होंने UFO anticipate नहीं किया, right? That is something new, for example. So that can be excused. But the new problem will also be tackled by what? The existing solution. No? तो पाकिस्तान को रोकने के लिए जो उन्होंने मेथड अपनाया हुआ है, वही उसको वही UFO को रोकने के लिए भी करेंगे, एलियंस को रोकने के लिए भी करेंगे, वही तो यूज करेंगे जो उनके पास है. Understand? So more or less these strategies are fixed. The problems may not be fixed. Yes, that's true, right? Or 90% of the problems may be more or less fixed. They might be knowing that this is what the major problem that occurs. Nothing more than this, right? And 10%, 20% may be totally new problems. But then, what is their tendency? To deal with the new problem with the old solution. That is why it is said messiness. They do not know exactly what solution is to be given. They just pick up, this seems to be good, achha, fine, this, give this solution. Are you getting this point? Same way. ठीक है? तो वही लॉजिक है कि ये ऐसा नहीं कि कोई एकदम आउट ऑफ द वर्ल्ड प्रॉब्लम आ जाएगा, गवर्नमेंट को पता है. या दी मैक्सिमम क्या प्रॉब्लम्स आ सकते हैं, भाई आ सकते हैं, ठीक है. तो इनसे डील करने के लिए हमारे पास सॉल्यूशन है. इससे कुछ एक्स्ट्राऑर्डिनरी आ गया, देन व्हाट विल डू? अच्छा ठीक है, विल गिव दैट सॉल्यूशन फॉर टाइम बीइंग, देन विल लुक फॉर अनदर सॉल्यूशन. तो दी reaction to circumstances, so they are not planned while understanding the nature of problems, right? They do not have a dedicated cell, a dedicated system to deal with problems, contingency problems. तो गवर्नमेंट के पास क्या contingency approaches होते हैं, बहुत minimum होते हैं. So they don't have So piecemeal reforms, sometimes they'll bring structural reforms, sometimes they'll focus on behavioral aspect, sometimes they'll focus on this, but they will not be able to integrate these problems together. You see the basic problem. Any basic function in any city, you see, what happens once, right? The telephone department comes, right? And what it does, it digs the road. Fine. Then comes the electricity department. Then it digs the road. Then comes the sewage, right? Then comes the Jal board. Right? Finally, when they all will come do it, then will come the PWD. Right? ऐसा नहीं, वो भी कर लेंगे, फिर कोई और आएगा. कौन आएगा जो बोलेगा मुझे क्या करना है भाई, जागरण करना है. Right? मुझे क्या करना है, मुझे एक रिलीजियस कांग्रीगेशन करना है. Right? फिर एमसीडी आएगी या कोई म्युनिसिपल कॉर्पोरेशन आएगा, वो बोर्ड लगाएगा, बिल बोर्ड्स लगाएगा. सी व्हाट दे आर डूइंग, दे कैन नेवर कोऑर्डिनेट देयर फंक्शन. राइट? इट इज आल्सो लॉजिकल दैट ओके कि भाई टेलीफोन की वायर होगी, इलेक्ट्रिसिटी की वायर होगी, सी सो इट शुड नॉट बी टेम्पर्ड या इट शुड नॉट बी टेम्पर्ड और इट शुड नॉट बी misuse. Yeah, it should not be impacted by any other activity, right? So that is why they do it separately. That's the logic, right? But they can always do it together, simultaneously. One finishes, then other starts. ये तो हो सकता है, consecutively तो कर सकते हैं, parallelly नहीं कर सकते, consecutively तो कर सकते हैं. But then again, the problem is what? Funds, budgets, right? Different departments receive budgets in different tranches, in different stages, right? Different time slots. कोई coordination, budgetary coordination नहीं है, workman coordination नहीं है. Most of the work is now being done by contractual labor, वो available. If they have better inventory management, right, or better management of human resource, one department, right, can use the resources used by the other department also. वही crane जा रही है, right, फिर वही JCB जा रहा है, फिर वही PWD is hiring a different JCB, right, and telephone department is hiring a different JCB, multiplying the same cost, cost for the same function. So this is also a big issue as highlighted by second year. So now, next. Behavioral and attitudinal changes. इसमें भी 2-3 aspects हैं, right? One, selection process, or you can say recruitment. Training. Selection process, again a big issue. See? Now, they have highlighted certain things, for example, right? How democratic process is changing. Right? This is visible in many aspects. Voter turnout. Electorate profiling change हो रहा है. Demographics change हो रहा है. Fine. Exposure, awareness, बहुत सारे changes हो रहे हैं. ठीक है. Then demands. Right? Then conflicts हैं. Issues हैं. The greater is the participation. So greater chances of conflicts. Now in such a change scenario, ठीक है, ऊपर से और क्या हो गया? Market reforms आ गया. Corporate governance. How do we want to be? We want to be investor friendly. We have to create an ecosystem of economic growth, right? So we are now trying to understand that how the scenario, social scenario has transformed, right? everything is commercialized, right? Things have huge magnitude from, like we said, local to global. They have manifestations in several forms, diverse products and services, exchange, trade, commerce, economic exchange, cultural exchange, बहुत सारे changes हो, fine, globalization, that is a different aspect. So once this is happening now, so what is the attitude of the bureaucrats that should be or that is desirable? Fine. So they have analyzed this aspect that जो behavior है bureaucrat का वो कैसा है? Same colonial system type, right? And what is needed now? See, so they are saying now technocracy is emerging powerful. It is also becoming influential. Technocracy plus generalism, right? How do we balance this? तो कैसे बनाएंगे ये model? That means what? They have to be receptive to these changes. For example, now see the debate over lateral entry. So by demanding reservations even in lateral entry, Rahul Gandhi has indicated that he is not able to understand the real meaning and nature of lateral entry. What primarily is the purpose of lateral entry? पहले ये तो समझ लो, इसलिए तो लाया जा रहा है. Fine, and तुम्हें उसमें भी वो चाहिए, but ठीक है, right? You can do it if you find suitable candidates. But then people from private sector, from skilled domains, they will not be willing to enter into this system. Right? So see, this lateral entry will change now the entire orientation of bureaucracy, right? It will make it competitive. It may have several problems, that's okay, but it will make it competitive. Fine. What else it will do? What is skilled? Correct. Diversification of workforce.
More efficiency and effectiveness, ease.
Correct. It will become more specialized. See, the idea of second RC has already talked about the domain competency. Domain competency, or you can say the competency framework. Competency framework. Fine. That is that even generalists must develop an area of expertise. Generalists must also choose journalists must also specialize in certain administrative function, right? For example, let's say a B.Tech or an engineer enters into IAS. He has done engineering in, let's say, some metallurgy. He can be very useful for what? For industry. Steel. Fine. Are you understanding? So a person, right, an MBBS comes, right, even a BCom comes, the opportunity to specialize, can do MBA from IIM or develop. Obviously, the civil services or the government gives you the opportunity, right, to specialize in certain areas. For example, public policy, governance, management, right? So IIMs and many of the global institutions they sponsor or they are in collaboration with the government of India, where these bureaucrats can go and they can upgrade their education. Are you getting? So that is why domain competency can be aligned with the education or the study opportunity that you get as a civil servant. So your basic academic background, right, links to the kind of education you acquire or the kind of opportunity government is giving you. You align your interest with that, develop an expertise, and then come back and work in that area throughout your career. That is what specialists do. So domain competence or competency framework is an idea promoted by second RC, and it says that you can specialize into that. There is no harm in generalists specializing in certain administrative functions. What is wrong with that? Right? At least they can find a suitable specialization or area of specialization as per their own academic background. And if they don't want that through academic background, they can still choose something else. But they all can choose something. कुछ तो choose कर सकते हैं. See? Have you written this? Fine. So what will be the change when certain things are happening, right? Now see. Then within this itself, right? Now there is a global anti-corruption movement. Now bureaucrats cannot follow exactly the traditional behavior they had. They cannot hide behind rules or procedures or secrecy. So let's say बहुत typical statement that second RC says कि भाई now the bureaucrats or civil servants, don't use bureaucrats. Civil servants must take the oath of transparency, right? Rather than oath of transparency rather than oath of secrecy. Then what we can do, right? We can redefine. All this will change the attitude. Redefine the corruption. Redefining the term corruption itself. For example, Prevention of Corruption Act 1988, which is the main law. So Prevention of Corruption Act 1988 initially defined corruption in a narrow sense. Even though it tried to broaden the idea, right? But primarily corruption has been equated with bribery. This is not. So corruption has to be redefined. Corruption is not just bribery. Once it is redefined, once the law is redefined, what will happen? See, the attitude will change. The behavior will change. The high-headedness, the ego, right? The sense of protection behind the law, that will change, right? Now see. So redefining the corruption. Then abuse of authority as an aspect of corruption. Include, which is already included, include now the abuse of corruption, or sorry, abuse of authority as an aspect of corruption. Right? Then, interesting. RTI तो implement हो गया, correct है? Denying or delaying the information should be taken as an act of corruption or a criminal act. See how big impact it would have. So if you're denying information or you're delaying information, that should be treated as part of corruption, right? Or a criminal act. See, the overall body language of the bureaucrat will change. Risk profiling of civil servants. as per their vulnerability. Normal.
Is taken to below level and swapping the degree with
नॉर्मल, मीडियम लेवल, और इसको एवरेज लेवल भी लिख सकते हैं. एंड हैबिचुअल. सो रिस्क लेवल क्या है? बिल्कुल. सो वन इज हैबिचुअल, वन इज अकस्टम्ड, राइट, वन इज अ डेलिब्रेट ऑफेंडर. अंडरस्टैंड? इससे एक फायदा होगा. क्या फायदा होगा? जो करप्शन लॉ है, फाइन, we would be able to at least identify, right? See, यहाँ पे ethical evaluation आ गया, relative ethical evaluation. Consequence may be same. You might have made a mistake. It will be visible in the mistake that is visible. Sorry, that is obvious, or that is the basis of evaluation. And ultimately, see, this act, whatever is done, may have several causes and factors behind it. जैसे हमने बोला कि भाई अगर आपने ब्राइब लिया, किसमें लिया? कैश में. डेलिबरेट है. ब्राइब लिया, किसमें लिया? चलो काइंड में. फाइन, इसको आपने डिक्लेयर किया एज गिफ्ट. So it will be very difficult, obviously, for the government to find out which bribe is bribe and which bribe is gift. But because of the circumstantial evaluation, because of if they have a hierarchy, if they have a classification of the bureaucrat's behavior, his past actions, his performance record, then they can make out at least whatever this person is saying is true. Though it is not always certain, fine, but at least some parameters can be set for evaluation. क्यों डिप्लीट होगी? You are working under a system, right? You should be conscious. Profiling politician थोड़ा करेगा, लॉ करेगा. Independent evaluators करेंगे. Fine. Even if, let's say, political minister has the power that, okay, fine, you can be, but his performance evaluation, track record, if he has facts to declare, how can anybody question him just like that? So there cannot be just one way of approaching it. Risk profiling से क्या हो सकता है? That the government or the organizations can keep a record of those people who can be appointed to certain positions, those who cannot be appointed. ये भी तो important है ना? You're appointing a highly corrupt person in the defense department, right? Or in any strategic department, or in finance ministry. ये तो कौटिल्य भी कहता था भाई, है ना? अलग अलग टाइप के टेस्ट लो और अपॉइंट करो. So risk profiling क्या है? The attitude, the behavioral aspect of people towards power or towards the use of power, right? So if they have a particular type of behavioral aspect, they will most likely to misuse power around them. Fine. Have you understood this much? अभी इतना ही पढ़ते हैं आज, ठीक है? बाकी कल पढ़ेंगे. लिख लिया अभी काफी. So you have to, don't mug it up, but still you have to remember the sequence. अभी पढ़. क्या चीज? क्या प्रपोज? अरे सब पढ़ेंगे, क्यों नहीं पढ़ेंगे? फाइन, लेकिन सब इसमें नहीं पढ़ेंगे. जो इसमें चाहिए वो पढ़ेंगे. सॉल्यूशन ही तो चाहिए. वी आर लुकिंग फॉर द सॉल्यूशन, नो?
बट क्योंकि वो तो एक ब्रिज का काम भी कर रहा है ना.
माइनर प्रोसीजर्स, राइट? मल्टीपल प्रोसीजर्स, अननेसेसरी प्रोसीजर्स हटा सकते हो. प्रोसेसेस इंप्रूव कर सकते हो. राइट? विल टॉक अबाउट सम ऑफ, डोंट वरी. जहां एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव रिफॉर्म्स चाहिए हम यूज करेंगे. फाइन. सो यू शुड जस्ट फॉलो द कस्टमाइजेशन, नथिंग एल्स. फाइन. बाकी जो है, जब चीज खत्म हो जाए फिर अपनी क्वेरी देखो कि वो सॉल्व हुई या नहीं. सो आई अंडरस्टैंड स्टूडेंट्स एक्सपेक्टेशन, बट हम ऑलरेडी बहुत हाई उससे पढ़ाते हैं, क्योंकि तुम्हारी एक्सपेक्टेशन मुझे पता है, तुम जैसे सिस्टम्स में जाते हो वैसे ही करते हो। कोई तुमसे 2 लाख ले लेगा और तुमको कूड़ा बेच देगा तो भी तुम पढ़ के आ जाओगे, राइट? कोई ज्यादा बेहतर पढ़ाएगा, मेहनत तो तुम्हें लगेगा थोड़ा और ले लेता हूँ इससे। ये मेंटालिटी होती है। दैट्स व्हाट आई टीच एवरी डे, रैशनल इकोनॉमिक डील। बट देयर इज ऑलवेज अ बार्गेनिंग प्रोसेस। अगर लर्नर्स हैं उनको पढ़ाने में मजा आता है, कस्टमर्स हैं उनको भगाने में मजा आता है, एज सिंपल एज दैट। सो ऑलवेज देयर इज distinction we make between customers and learners, right? And you'll be surprised to know that we don't care, to be very honest. There was a main student, right? उसको क्वेश्चन और आंसर करने की बजाय उसको फॉर्मेट चाहिए था। See, normally what they do is, anybody normally they want to make it commercially, no, so professional that they are making the test, right? So they are using the actual UPSC का जैसे ऊपर का कवर पेज होता है, फिर इंस्ट्रक्शन, फिर हिंदी इंग्लिश वो सब लिखते हैं, फिर ये right? When I have an English medium institution, I will not convert that into Hindi, first of all. Even if UPSC does it, UPSC is catering to both the mediums. We are not catering, first of all, right? Secondly, why to unnecessarily complicate the process when the primary objective is something else? See? So I told that, so he's writing mains. I told him, see, you put a sheet if you want, right? Mark your questions. मैं अपने आप marks fill कर दूंगा जब मैं check करूंगा. But that I'm not going to make. It's a waste of time for me. It's a waste of time for you also. If I keep doing that, right? एक स्टूडेंट जो है, दूसरा स्टूडेंट जिसकी कॉपी इवैल्यूएट करनी है, वो कैसे हो पाएगी? मैं तुम्हारी मार्क्स भरता रहूं, क्वेश्चन नंबर A B C D ये मैं कर दी, मैं क्यों करूं? ये तो यूपीएससी का एग्जामिनर करता है, जिसका वो काम है, राइट? जिसका प्रोफेशनल काम है. That is just for mainly for record keeping, right? So मैंने कहा यहाँ पे what is the use? What is the utility of all that? So if you are already exposed to the process, why do it? अब तुम बोलोगे सर एडमिट कार्ड भी दो, फॉर्म भी फिल कराओ, राइट? बबल्स भी करवाओ मुझसे, सब करो, तब ये प्रैक्टिस. व्हाट इज दिस प्रैक्टिस? Try to understand what I'm simply saying. There are people who prefer formalities than to the actual task, and they get in that process. So the moment somebody does that, right, I normally withdraw from that bargain. क्योंकि मुझे ऐसे लोग नहीं चाहिए. We don't, nobody wants. It depends upon the kind of teacher you are. So you can be happy, it's okay कि कोई भी आगे चलो ठीक है, पैसे तो दे ही रहा है, ठीक है, क्या करना है, right? But ऐसे नहीं होता. We have a process. You have to align to the process. I will not align to you. You will align to the system. System is already designed, keeping everything in mind. तो जो हम पढ़ाते हैं कंटेंट, हम बेवकूफ थोड़ी कि हम इतना पढ़ाएंगे, क्यों पढ़ाएंगे? That's a fact. That is how the world works. I'm not distinct from this world. So why should we do that? Right? Why do I unnecessarily put myself into that much of effort? It is an easy task to teach 6 months non-stop, and you cannot take a break. It's not a small task. It's not a profession which is easy, right? Doctors भी 24 घंटे जगते हैं, teachers भी 24 घंटे जगते हैं, you know. Simply क्लास में आके आपको इतना कंटेंट ऐसे याद करके कोई नहीं पढ़ा सकता. Years and years of effort लगता है उसको करने में. See, anyone who's doing it. I'm not talking about me or anybody. Even if they are making slides, they are making notes for you, they are putting effort for that, right? और उसको qualitative करने में तो बहुत effort लगता है. You can imagine yourself, if you want to write an answer, you might take hours to write one answer qualitatively. Right? A teacher has to make questions, give answers, discuss answers, evaluate answers, and that he has to do for more than 100 students. He also has 24 hours. No? Again, so you see, anyone who is committed to quality task, एक student हो, teacher हो, उसके पास हमेशा time कम होगा. लेकिन time कम क्यों होगा? क्योंकि वो quality work करेगा. सिर्फ work करने के लिए बहुत time. So you just process the things, right? When we have to do question, when we have to do PY, we'll do all that. That is what I'm just saying, because students do not have that ability to understand. If you teach one topic, they'll take the PYQs. That topic, PYQ is not from that topic. It is only using that topic. वो अंडरस्टैंडिंग कहाँ से ले रहा है? वो जो आखिरी चैप्टर तुमने पढ़ा होगा वहां से भी वो अंडरस्टैंडिंग है. तो जब तक पूरा नहीं पढ़ोगे कैसे लिख सकते हो? It is stupidity, that you say, I've studied definition of PubMed, now I'm going to write PYQs. नहीं हो सकता ना? When you will study, right? Ultimately जाके when you study development administration, administrative law, तब तो definition और clear होगा. तो 2 क्लास के बाद तुम PYQ लिखने लगे तो तुम्हें क्या लगेगा कि यार मैंने ये टॉपिक पढ़ा बट मुझे तो आता नहीं है. क्यों नहीं आता है? Because you do not still have understood the entire spectrum of the subject. Same happens with general studies. Polity, article 1 पढ़ लिया, 5 पढ़ लिया, 10 पढ़ लिया, गवर्नेंस तो पढ़ा ही नहीं. एग्जाम पीसमील नहीं आता है, एग्जाम तो एक साथ आता है, राइट? पढ़ाना पीसमील हो सकता है. तो व्हेन स्टूडेंट इज लर्निंग, until and unless, right, they comprehend the entire syllabus, comprehend everything, and till then they cannot write good answers. They cannot even understand the questions of UPSC. 4 ऐसे लिखने से तुम वहां पे ऐसे के टॉपिक समझ जाओगे क्या? नहीं. कि मैंने मोरालिटी के बारे में पढ़ लिया, अब मैं मॉरल ऐसे लिखना चाहता हूँ. See, there are n raised to power n dimensions. Which one they have asked, we don't know. भाई आपने तो बेसिक पढ़ा भी ना. इसीलिए इट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू फॉलो एक स्ट्रैटेजिक मेथड, राइट? जो क्वेश्चन शुरू में कराया जाए वैसे करो, फिर करो, फिर करो, फिर करो. टीचर को खुद पता है कि इसको कैसे PYQ मुझे अपने क्वेश्चंस में, अपने डिजाइन में कैसे फिट करना, अपने कंटेंट में कैसे फिट करना. इज ऑलरेडी फाइन. तो तुमसे 10-15 साल ऑलरेडी एक्सपीरियंस है, तो उसको आता नहीं होगा क्या? That's the drawback, that we don't follow exactly what we have to do. तो करो, what is general market का जो है orientation.
Unlock your ethical edge with ProdEgyIAS. Join our Ethics Foundation program under the expert guidance of Ashutosh Pandey starting 4th August 2025. Master concepts, build perspectives and excel in your UPSC journey. Enroll now at ProdEgyIAS, where success begins.